This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by AmazonHerb.net/AmazonAlive. AmazonHerb.net/AmazonAlive.
All right, I'm standing here with a very light-sensitive Michael Hampton from HomelandStupidity.us. And Michael has a new product he's thinking about putting out. Michael's a technical expert, and tell me a little about this idea you had.
Okay, well, this actually came about when I read a speech by Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff, and he was going
also
on
known as Skeletor.
Yes, him.
Totally a Tom Cruise bike.
And he was going on and on about identification and how the government uses it to keep people safe, which they don't, but that's another story. But one of the things he said is that the private sector should start looking into alternatives for identification, and maybe in the future the government would accept some of them. So I've had this idea kind of floating around in the back of my head for a while, and I decided, okay, what the hell, let's put it out there and see what comes of it. The idea is to build a private identification system for people in this community. Now, this identification system is going to be a little bit different than your government identification system, because what happens with the government ID is you go get a bunch of documents which can be faked or can be whatever, and you take these out to an office, you stand in line for 6 hours, and if you're lucky, you get an ID in 2 weeks. Now, my idea is, instead of having some government bureaucrats validate your identity by whatever means they do, my idea is to have an ID where your identity is validated by all the people you know. It's a concept called the Web of Trust, which has been used in encryption systems for probably a decade or more now. Specifically PGP encryption, which is generally the most secure encryption you can find. And the ID card and the Web of Trust system will be based on this.
Now, what would this offer the average person that they wouldn't get from a government ID?
Well, what it offers is, first, you don't have to carry a government ID when you're just wandering around the street. What it offers is the assurance that you have reputation, that you have standing in your community, because the card has digitally signed, digitally encrypted signatures from everyone you know saying they vouch for you. The government ID, you know, the only thing that you get from that is the state says, well, you are so-and-so, such and such. With this, you get an entire community says you are whoever you are. And when you present this ID, all that information is downloaded, and whoever you present it to can say, oh, well, I know them and them and them. I trust them, and therefore I can reasonably trust you that you are who this ID says you are.
And sort of it takes away some of the monopoly over identification that the government has in some ways now.
Yeah, it takes away the monopoly, and it offers it's a different approach to identification than the government takes, and that I think is the key, because the government's kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. No matter what it does, identification's no different. I get asked for ID so often that from people that a government ID is not really even appropriate to what they're asking for ID for. A private ID would serve better to those purposes.
All right. Do you have a timeline for maybe putting a prototype out, or?
Prototypes, I have no idea, because the hardware I'm looking at that's actually secure enough to do this right is only sold in Europe. There aren't any U.S. distributors, so I'm going to have to import some hardware, and that could be a little while. To have a functioning system up and running with cards in people's pockets, probably a year or two.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. Thanks as always, Michael.
Of course.
Revolution, give us back our Constitution!
Remember those tireless Ron Paul activists who came to New Hampshire for Operation Live Free or Die? Well, one of them is Debbie Ullman of Florida. Not only did Debbie fight for your freedom here in New Hampshire this January, she's now a sponsor of your favorite show, The Ridley Report. Debbie invites you to sample the exotic natural herbs of the Amazon Power Shake, Pure Camus, and a lot of other things that I want to eat, but can't pronounce. The natives of the Amazon need trading partners for sustainable commerce. Head to the video description for this clip, click on Debbie's link to learn more about the importance of the Amazon and the benefits of Amazon herbs.
AmazonHerb.net/AmazonAlive. AmazonHerb.net/AmazonAlive.